Hello and welcome back to College Football UK podcast. I am your host Fletch, and as ever I am joined by, just one this week, one absolute stunner in Nick. How are you, sir?
All good, thank you.
You might notice if you haven't been paying attention in the last couple of weeks to our social medias and whatnot, this is a brand new day for recording and for releasing an episode. Very exciting time, and that is because we've changed the day because we can't record on a Friday night and release on a Sunday morning, Nick. That'd be silly to preview games that have already been yesterday. So we've moved to recording on a Wednesday night, releasing on a Thursday morning, so we can actually get it in time. And because we're doing it this week, it means football's here. It means actual real football's here, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, some might say real football was here at the, weekend just gone, but not
on this podcast. And either way, that's just pre-season. That doesn't really count. So, anyway, as we get ready to start this weekend, our previews of the upcoming games this weekend, thought we'd drop by with a little bit of news. And I know, Nick, you've got a couple of bits for us this week.
I do. Dylan Raiola, he was told this week that he's the starting QB at Nebraska. So Matt Rule told his QB this week. So he's up. He's number one, and he's up next weekend. Week one. Coming into college, 5-star running back Akindia. He's committed to Alabama. He had offers from Ole Miss and Mississippi State as well, but he's chosen to go to the Crimson Tide. He's rated the number 2 running back coming out of high school and the number 31 overall in the standings. So he's committed, but I suppose he could uncommit and commit to somebody else if he really wanted. I know that we were speaking off air about Oklahoma State adding QR codes to their helmet. I did see it. I just sort of left it as okay, but I know that you picked up on that, so I'll let you have that one.
I want to say that this week it reminded me a bit of the head coach was on Pat McAfee earlier. I saw the clip earlier today where he was saying how you can have a watch party in LA or New York or London or Tokyo, and if you are, if the moment takes you, you can just scan the back of a helmet and donate to their NIL program. And my first thoughts were, one, how good does he think that the access to college football is in the UK that we are having watch parties? Well, I know a couple may do, but then it kind of hit me that at those watch parties, or even just the games that we're going to get legally over here, how often are we going to get to watch Oklahoma State? And then 3, and this includes London and Tokyo. And then finally, I just kind of got a bit of and who's going to get that impassioned about it where they're going to go, do you know what? I'm going to give 50 quid to this quarterback. I'm going to make sure £50 goes to this running back because, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit...
Because they haven't got enough money as
exactly.
It is.
I just thought I get the sentiment, I really do, and I think it's a cool idea. But I also thought a bit, no, that's not happening in London, my friend.
No. So, but I mean, these are I can see why they're doing it. It's all part of trying to raise, because we had this discussion in the summer about NIL, and the fact is that NIL's coming and the players want their money, but effectively the colleges don't want to give the players money. The colleges want to continue to reap the money in themselves. So by doing things like this, hey, scan this QR code and donate 50 quid, that's 50 quid that the college don't have to pay. And the idea, and I honestly don't think that people in London and Tokyo are the target, but if every Oklahoma State fan donated, I don't know, $50,
Yeah.
that's probably a good, probably a good what? Couple of $100,000,
Yeah.
if not more. And it's just money that then the college don't have to give out, and it's just trying to protect their own coffers, really. I was much more impressed with Colorado, who did something different and put the players' social media
Yeah.
handles on the training shirts. I thought that was a much better idea and something different, as opposed to, here, can we have some money, please, because we're not rich enough yet.
Yeah.
So
I get that. One other question that I've got for you. Well, I say a question. There's also something I want to bring to the table is I doubt it, but have you watched the new Money Game documentary surrounding LSU on Prime? I think it came out yesterday.
I haven't watched it. I've seen the trailer because you posted the
Yeah.
trailer on our chat group. I've watched the trailer. I
Right.
don't have Prime at the moment. It's one of these where I can't afford Prime,
Yeah.
Disney, and Netflix and everything else on. So at the moment, Prime's sat off
Yeah.
limits at the moment. I will get round to it. At the moment, I'm trying to get through this Receiver series on
Yeah.
Netflix. That's got my
How far are you
attention at
through
the
that
moment.
one?
About 2/3 of the way.
I love that one, mostly just because I'm on St. Brown's in it. But I did enjoy the other players. I love watching George Kittle in that one. He's great TV.
I mean, I think it's a good sort of follow on to the quarterback
Yeah.
series that they had last year. But whereas last year they had three quarterbacks, Mahomes and Cousins were like the mainstays, and then there was just a little bit of Marcus Mariota, just to
Yeah.
fill in the gaps. He didn't play long enough to get anything, but because there was only a few of them, it was a lot
Yeah.
more detailed. Whereas in the receiver series, because there's so much more of them, there's less of the personal
Yeah.
story. There's that bit about Amar St. Brown when he's talking about his family and everything else, and then it just stops and cuts and goes to something else. Whereas in the quarterback series, you'd have gone and seen that in the background, and you'd have
Yeah.
seen more families. So it's a bit different, but I guess that's the whole point
Yeah.
of the series. But well, we're not a
No.
Netflix review show. Carry on.
I am. I'm just saying. I have got Prime. I steal it off my mother, so I will try and give it a go. Hopefully by the weekend. If not, it might be something that I can download, take offline, and then keep me entertained on Saturday for an hour or two. As you know, may not be able to connect to the internet for a little bit. I might need to be kept entertained. So hopefully, I will be able to at least give it a go. I'm looking forward to it. But more importantly, it's that time now. I think here we go, Nick. Is that it's a big week, and with big weeks come big questions and big trivia questions. And before we delve into our game, my little trivia question for the week is: how many players in college football this year? Wait, no, I'm going to word this better. How many D1 players this year have parents or a father who played in the NFL?
I don't think it's probably as many as you think. It's probably quite a few. I mean, you're talking what, 90 man rosters.
And like 130 odd of them.
Yeah. I reckon it's probably not as high as you think, but it's still probably. I'll go with 150, but I think I'm probably way too low.
Well, the stat I've got here, Scott, you way too high.
All right, okay, that's surprising.
Unless, like, even the where I got the answer from was like we just didn't know half of them. but I've got 17 here. Had a parent
Wow.
who
It
played
was way too
in the
high.
NFL. Nebraska linebacker Willis McGahee IV, son of Willis McGee. Then we have Antonio Gates Jr. Bet you can't guess who his dad was.
Antonio
That would
Gates
be the
Senior.
On it today. That's the
Yeah.
Antonio Gates Jr. is a Michigan State wide receiver. Kennedy Urlacher, Notre Dame safety. Can you guess who his dad was? It was Brian Urlacher. Shador and Shiloh Sanders, who both play for Colorado. No, you'll never guess who their dad was.
Oh, Shiloh.
You'll never guess who their...
Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders.
Mr. Prime himself. Eden James,
Indeed.
Howard running back, is the son of Edgren James. I can't see the writing there. E.J. Smith, Texas A&M running back. Who was his dad?
Alex Smith.
Think the running back. Following in his dad's footsteps.
The
second greatest of his generation to play running back. Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith. The second greatest running back of his generation to play running back. Which is great because he played in an era with Barry Sanders, so being second is also really, really good. Minnesota wide receiver Christian Driver. Can you guess who his dad was?
Is his mum Mini Driver?
And his dad is Taxi. He's the son of Donald Driver. Henry Hasselback, UCLA quarterback, son of Matt Hasselback. Owen McCowan, UTSA quarterback, is the son of...
Bengals. It's not... No, it's not... Oh.
Josh. There we go.
That's
Cole Pennington, Marshall quarterback. There aren't many Penningtons. Is son of Chad Pennington.
Chad. I didn't have his
LSU
first name.
tight end Mason Taylor, son of a formerly in your division.
Aaron Taylor. No.
Jason Taylor.
Jason Taylor.
Florida State defensive lineman Marvin Jones Jr., whose dad was...
Marvin
Correct.
Jones Sr.
I like this one because Florida State, will mention it in a minute, about how they've released a depth chart for the week. And Marvin Jones Jr. is on there. Now I have a jersey in my drawers over there that says foot of Marvin Jones Jr., but a different Marvin Jones Jr., of course, the former Detroit Lions wide receiver. But I do find it funny that Marvin Jones Jr., we're going to get to finally watch him live. Next up, we have Tennessee defensive back Christian Harrison. Can you guess who was his dad?
Oh, God. Steelers.
Patriots.
No, not Steelers. Patriots.
Rodney Harrison. Rice quarterback E.J. Warner.
Yeah.
Son of legend
what's
himself.
His face? Yeah. NFL
Greatest
Network,
Cinderella story of all time.
Yeah, American Underdog. Seen that film? Good film.
Yeah.
I know who you
Kurt
mean.
Warner. Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola. Sam has mentioned his dad and who his godfather is on a couple of times on this podcast.
Yeah, got
son of former Lion Dominic Raiola. Dylan Raiola's godfather also being Matthew Stafford. And the last one I've got here, Carson Bruner. Son of Mark Bruner.
Would Archie Manning not count on that list?
That he would do. So I do think there probably are a couple missing, but
I don't think there's enough to be 150 though.
No, I don't think so. Unless you probably have a few there that don't really count because they made a roster on the practice squad in the late 90s, but some of them.
There's probably still a few scattered in D2 as well.
Yeah.
You know, not every player that plays is going to make Division One. So there's probably a few scattered in Division 2 and Division 3.
But you also think as well, like, reading some of them, gotta make you feel a little bit old. Because now I know you're a little bit older and followed this sport for a little bit longer than I am, but now I'm starting to see a couple of players who I watched. Their sons are on the way into college football, and it's a bit like, okay.
I tell you what makes me feel really old, and I take this away from football, but both me and you have the same allegiances in soccer. What makes me feel old is Sean White Phillips.
Oh yeah,
the man has a 17-year-old son. I remember when Sean White Phillips was 19, and burst onto the scene. You know, I remember when Sean White Phillips, the little boy, the little lad, all of 5 foot, whatever he is, burst onto the scene. For those that don't know, he's the son of great Arsenal striker Ian Wright, or adopted son. And yeah, he himself has got a 17-year-old son who I think he plays at Stoke now. He was at City. He was in City's academy at one point. I think he's at Stoke now. That's what makes me feel old. That I remember. Yeah. So yeah,
I get that. And as mentioned earlier in this episode, we'll move on. We'll stop making you and I feel old. As mentioned, we'll makes you feel young again. We're going gallivanting on Saturday, all the way over to Ireland for the day. And why is that, Gary? Gary? Why is that, Nick? What's going on Saturday, Nick?
Because we're going to go and see Gary.
We are. Why are we going to see Gary? What's so interesting about seeing Gary on Saturday?
Because we all decided to have a podcast day out.
I'm going to go watch a group of men in tight pants throw some pigskin around, catch some pigskin for a few hours in a different country, which is going to be very, very fun because, as I mentioned before, football is back. It is back. Week 0 of college of the NCAA season starts on Saturday at 5 p.m. Greenwich Meridian Time, 12 p.m. EST, and 9 a.m. Pacific.
9 a.m.
Come on. Right. I'm on it now. I've got it. Starting with Florida State University Seminoles taking on the Georgia Tech University Yellow Jackets in Dublin, Ireland. What are your thoughts? What are your early thoughts on the game as we approach it a few days away?
I think the Yellow Jackets are going to get battered.
Really?
Yeah. The over-under is set at 55.5 points. I'm taking the over. The spread is Florida State at 10.5. I'm taking the over.
Yeah.
You know, Florida State finished 13-1 last year. Should have made the playoffs, but we all know about what happened and the issues are with it. Georgia Tech finished 7-6. Neither team. Georgia haven't had major improvements on the defense, which is where their problems were last year. Meanwhile, although Florida State lost like 10 players to the draft, I think one of the
30. I think it was the same as
numbers,
Michigan in 13.
Yeah, they've recruited well and they've managed to keep their core players together. So, I kind of expect Gary to have a really good weekend because I expect his boys to smash it.
Well, actually, that's a really good place to start. As you mentioned a second ago, though, with like a little bit of the lines and whatnot for the game. I know, as you've already said, that the spread, and I got these from Bet365. I don't know if you got them from the same, but Bet365 kind of share similar to a lot of the stateside bookies and whatnot. So yeah, the spread is 10.5 in favour of FSU. And if you were to put any money on that, that is 10 to 11 in terms, and obviously in the reverse, it is also 10 to 11 in plus 10.5 for Georgia Tech. The over-under, again, as you've already mentioned, is 55.5 points. And the line is FSU is 2 to 9 and Georgia Tech is 7 to 2. So it isn't it's being predicted to be a game that will get quite a few points, and Georgia Tech will not see the majority of those points.
No.
The win totals, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago as well, Florida State are predicted that their over-under is 9.5. Georgia Tech's is 5.52 as well, just to kind of give you an idea of what they're expected to do this season.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia Tech have lost. They're 1-5 in the last 6 opening games of the season.
Yeah.
So, they are not quick starters. And when you get a big team, a good team, straight off the bat, you need to be switched on. Yeah. You need to come all guns blazing, sort of thing. Like I said, they had one of the worst defenses last year. They haven't made absolute massive strides to improve that. And yet Florida State have now got one of the most experienced QBs in college football. A man who's 40 starts, 30-10, and thrown over 8,000 yards and 57 touchdowns. That's the sort of numbers that the NFL want to see their QBs coming into the league with. This guy's ready to go. He's not gonna be phased at coming to Dublin and being in a new environment with probably a very different partisan sort of crowd. He's not going to be phased with that. He's seen it. He's done it, at that level. So I genuinely think Georgia Tech are in trouble.
Interesting, because again, one of the tweets put out this week was because this isn't the only game on during week 0. And one of the tweets by another UK-based college football journalist, as well as the group chat that we're in with a couple of the other journalists in the UK, have all said that they believe this game to be a lot closer than many people give it credit for. Call it week 0, I guess, like a week 0 hump, a bit like the first week of the NFL, although you do get 3 weeks of preseason in the NFL. But kind of call it that first week where neither team is fully up to the very best. So I guess not anything can happen. Most people would consider Georgia Tech to lose this one, but they believe it to be a lot closer than you would look, than things would look.
No, I'm funnily enough, while you were talking now, I was looking at notes that I wrote for last year's College Classic for the Notre Dame Navy game. which finished 42-3 obviously in favour of the Notre Dame. How's this? I know this is a completely different game. How's this for a stat? Last year, the Navy defence allowed Notre Dame to gain 94.8% of available offense. Oh, I don't think it's going to be that bad a game. But, do I think Georgia Tech are going to score? Yes. Are they going to score more than once? Probably yes. But I think it could be one of these for every 10 that Florida State score. Maybe Georgia Tech are only scoring 3 or 6. And so, as the game progresses, the gap will just get a little bit bigger. I don't know, maybe 55.5 is a little too high. Maybe it's worth the under, I don't know.
So,
but
I think asking this question then. It's pretty safe to say where you would bet given the money line. On the money.
Yeah.
Would you, I won't say expect, but where would you be looking at with regards to the spread? Would you be looking at a 10.5? Would you take Georgia Tech in that?
No, I would. If
would
I
you still,
would, I will.
expect Florida State to cover the spread.
If I bet, when I bet, I will bet. When I bet, it'll be Florida State to win. Take the over, because I do think Georgia Tech will score. That's where my risk, I think, is on the over. I would take FSU to cover the spread at 10.5. So when I bet, it'll be Florida State to win, Florida State to cover the spread, and I will pick the over, and I will regret it massively when it's 54 and a bit, and I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. When it's there's 51 points put up on the board. You got a couple of minutes left to go in the game,
and I'm screaming for another touchdown.
It's that there's a 3rd and 4, kind of close to it. You're in the opponent's half. You're hoping to cover it, and then they end up settling for a field goal, and we see the game out. Is that kind of moment you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate them. I hate those moments. But as far as FSU go as well, so hang on, let me just get my other tab back up. There we go. Oh, sorry. Nope. How do you feel looking? Well, are there any players that are going to stand out for you? Would you like to see any certain performances from certain players going into Saturday's game?
Like I said, I think I'm not even going to try and butcher his name. I think Florida State's quarterback, DJ, and I even wrote it out, DJ him. I'm going to call him DJ. I think DJ's should have a good game. So he will be any success that Florida State have will come through him, I think. If Georgia Tech are going to have some success, they need Hayes King, who's their QB, to be on. I think they need their running back Jamal. Is it Hayes? Ains, I think. They need him to be, on form as well. And I think it's one of these where you need to take advantage of when you've got the ball and make sure you don't give away silly penalties, don't give away silly yards. Just keep churning the clock, burning the yards, and move up the pitch. That's all Georgia Tech can do, and just hope that they get some good luck on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, I'm going to say another thing there, though, for Georgia Tech is Haynes King has very good talent. I think he put up 3,500 yards, 35 touchdowns last year, but the problem he had was throwing 16 interceptions. obviously you would expect a much better. You would expect the improvement to go throughout the year. But would it also be a case, I guess, you're going to have to play a lot cleaner football? And because that's an interception a game. That's more than one interception per game that you throw in. So cleaning up the football, making sure you're not throwing nearly as many interceptions, that ratio is going to have to clear. So would you reckon as well? I say you mentioned the ground game, but playing cleaner football through the air.
Yeah, I think those college. You can see in the NFL when the new QBs come into the NFL and they're in training camp and they're in practice, post preseason games. You can see where they're looking for the window, and in college that window's a lot bigger and it's open for a lot longer, so they've got more time to throw the ball through in that window. Whereas in the NFL, those windows close a lot quicker and they're not as big to start with. And I think that, some QBs have said that's probably one of the hardest transitions from the college level to the pro level. I think if King has a good game, yeah, but it's going to take a team effort. I think it's something like 6 of their last 7, or certainly 5 of their last 6, were one-score games.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that you clean up and don't do anything silly. And that's why I said if you can move the ball up the field when you're in possession, and try and restrict Florida State to some 3 and outs, or just a couple of drives where they move the ball and then they're 3 and out. That's how Georgia Tech are going to win it. They've got to keep the ball moving and burn the clock. So I think Haynes or Jamal will probably see a lot of yards.
Yeah. One of the things that is going to be is potentially having 2 relatively leaky defenses, and having 2 defenses that can hopefully. I mean, you're more likely to find a defense that steps up in Florida State, and you would expect Florida State to step up a bit more. Georgia Tech had a really bad defense last year. It was not good, and they're only returning. I don't think it's half of the defense; it's half of the snaps that were played last. Like they didn't play more. What they're returning is half of the snaps that were played last year. That's a lot of turnover on a defense that wasn't very good to begin with. What would you tend to expect to see out of a Georgia Tech team on Saturday in that situation? You imagine probably a lot of learning going on and a lot of figuring things out as they learn to work together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to planning. I think Florida State knew they were going to lose a lot of players to the draft, and so the backups, certainly the last few games of the season last year, when the games were won and done, starters were straight out, the backups were in, and it was about getting those players reps, not necessarily for then, but for now, for next season, for this season. So, I don't think there's going to be that big a drop off from Florida State. So, I see a competitive game, but I mean, I don't know if I see a competitive game this year and I compare it to the absolute blowout I saw last year, yes, I would say the blowout last year was better because that was Notre Dame, but you do when you're like me, when you come into this week and you're a neutral, you want to see it. You want to see a good game. You want to see lots of scoring both sides, and you'd love it to be 28-28 going into the last 2 minutes of the
yeah.
game, and it all comes down. It all
Of course you
comes
would
down
as well.
to this.
If your spread's fit 55.5 and you're already 56 points in the fourth quarter, you're laughing.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right as well, and you don't want to be sat there halfway through the fourth quarter and thinking, just go to the pub, or let's go make sure we're on time for our, there's miss out on a bit of the traffic, getting ready to go for our flight, etc. On the way home, you want to be sat there thinking, maybe I'd be happy to miss the flight tonight to make sure that we watch the end of this game. I don't know, it might be worth it. You might be in that. Well, you want to be in that position though, where a game is tight and a game is fun, and you don't want to leave until.
I don't want.
Well, no, you don't want overtime, but
I'd rather make this flight. Thank you. I don't want overtime.
But you do want that point in the fourth quarter, though. You don't want to be watching meaningless minutes in a game if you are in neutral. I guess that was probably quite a silly way of putting it, but yeah, you don't want wasted minutes. You don't want wasted time. And just to kind of, I guess, a couple of things I've read coming out of this week as well, just out of some of the Seminole stuff and some of the Yellow Jacket stuff, is the Seminoles have looked good in practice this week. DJ has been playing fantastic, and the defensive line has looked disruptive. And apparently Marvin Jones Jr. has had a good week. Georgia Tech, I haven't heard a lot of what's going on within their camp. Maybe I've just focused a bit less, but from everything I'm hearing, Florida State are looking pretty good in camp, which is good to see. And right, so before you and I think we move on. In a minute, we are going to play a video because Gary, even though he couldn't join us today because but it's his anniversary, by the way, so happy anniversary to Gary and Mrs. Gary. Gary has sent in a video for us to play, and he will preview the game a little bit, which I'll play in a second. But before we do, Nick, and before we move on to last couple of games of the week, I think it's a bit daft to ask you who you're predicting to win the game. So again, I'll ask you one more time. We'll go against the spread. Who is going to make the spread in this game?
Florida
so you're going Florida State, 10.5 spread. I will go against you a little bit there. And I will go in the opposite direction, and I will say that Georgia Tech will make the spread in a game that's quite close in the fourth quarter. Florida State will obviously take the points, but spread will be.
So would you take? So this is the thing. Earlier on I said the biggest thing I have is that over/under set at 55.5. I've got no issue with taking Florida State because I see them winning. I've got no issue in taking the spread at 10.5 because I think they'll cover that as well. It's that 55.5. That's a big number. Would you take the under, or would you take the over? Like you just said, a 28-28 game is already covered the spread. So you only need, if we're talking about this is going to be a close game, and we just talked about both teams scoring, there's a good chance that spread gets covered. But as I look, while you were talking and I looked at last year's score, even though Notre Dame absolutely pissed all over Navy, it was only a 45-point game because Navy only scored 3.
I'd take the over. Maybe I do. Maybe I like living on the edge a little bit. I'll take the over on it just because, like you say, both teams will come out and put points up. I think, given that if Georgia Tech's offense can improve the way it looks like they should have over the summer, I'm not saying the way that they've proven they can. At the end of the day, this is going to be the first game of the season. By week 4, you can turn around and say, oh, well, they've shown that they have improved. they still need to show that they've improved. But some of the things like the cleaning up the football, if they can get that ground game going and get it going early, without the FSU D line being too disruptive and breaking that up, I can see that the over being made on that one. So I'll take it because I do see Georgia Tech putting up some points, like you do.
Yeah.
I see Georgia Tech putting some points up. What about? Would you take it?
I'm tempted to take the over. My gut feeling to start with was take the over, because I do think both teams will score. I do think both teams will put decent points on the board. It's whether FSU will put enough points on the board. I don't want it to be, a 28-15 game and then FSU sort of slow it down and just see the game out.
Yeah.
I want them to keep going. So that's where my only issue. If this was, I don't know, if this was 50 rather than, 49.5 rather than 55.5, I'd be taking the over all day long. It's those extra few points that you're asking, the extra 5.5 points to get covered. That's where there's that little gut feeling that, but no, I would take the over. I would agree with you. My initial gut feeling was to take the over.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, it's just going to be one of those, and as well, I think it'll come down to how you start in the first quarter as well. How quickly can one of the team or both the teams get out the blocks? Because if it ends the first quarter ends and it's 3-0, a field goal has been scored, and that's about as long. Both maybe offenses are kind of struggling. I don't know. If you end the first quarter and it's 7-7 or 10-3 or 10-7, and there's been a couple of big plays and both teams have managed to get points on them, but you'd be quite happy with that because if it's 7-7, that's 14 points in the first quarter, and on average, if the game was to continue along that trajectory, you're on it. You've got it. Yeah, I'd take the over, but yeah, hesitantly taking the over because, like I say, when you think about it, when you actually think about it, it's a lot of points. It's 8 touchdowns. That's 8 touchdowns, and how often realistically do we get to see 8 touchdowns?
Yeah, I mean, hang on, I wrote it down. I saw it just earlier.
No, this was Cumberland playing.
Yeah, last year Sam Hartman only hit 4, and for Notre Dame against Navy, they scored 42, but only 4 of them were touchdowns. So it, like you said, 8 touchdowns is a lot. Is a lot to cover,
but you never know, and it's the kind of game that maybe. Actually, if you actually open Bet365 and said put £5 on it now, I'd take the under just because I know if I take the under, it's going to hit the over. Like I would put my money on the under because I know I'll lose the bet. It'll go on the over, and then we'll get a really exciting, explosive game out of it. So you hedge your bets.
Depends how much you've had to drink as to depends on which way you're going to go.
It's the worst thing when you do betting and you have to kind of go. Yeah, you kind of play. I guess sometimes I play that game of if I bet, it's probably not going to come through. So do I bet against what I want, and then maybe it tricks the football gods into letting it happen. With that being said, stick around. We've got 2-3 minutes. Gary has delivered a message for us with his preview of FSU at Georgia Tech with a little bit more of a... it means a little bit more to him. A little bit more passion. There's a little bit more to it for Gary. So in a couple of minutes, we'll just play Gary's video now, and in a couple of minutes, we'll get on to the other few games being played.
Hey guys, sorry I can't join the show this evening, but here's my quick rundown of what to expect this weekend. So myself and thousands of other Seminole fans are descending on Dublin on the Emerald Isle to watch the Week 0 College Football Ireland Aer Lingus Classic. Florida State University coming into town to play the Georgia Tech Golden Jackets. Not sure how many Georgia Tech fans are going to be in the building. My timeline is obviously slightly Garnet orientated, so there seems to be an awful lot of Seminoles flying over from Florida to check out the Emerald Isle this weekend. So I'll be there along with everybody else. Hopefully we'll catch up some of you watchers and some of you people out there as well. I know Fletch will be catching up as well. So, quick rundown of what to expect. So obviously this game's going to be kind of a redemption game for a couple of the QBs in this game now. Georgia Tech, Martin Haynes, he's coming out of a couple of years of not really setting a world alight. Texas A&M, bit prone to throwing the ball to the opposition, quite frankly, and whether or not he can get over that this year is going to be a big thing for Georgia. For Florida State, we've got DJ coming across, kind of redemption as well. He kind of went and hid at Oregon State after his kind of failing at Clemson, but this is his one last shot, sort of at an ACC redemption, one last shot to prove himself worthy before going into the draft. He four-star recruit when he went into Clemson, had to go to Oregon State to kind of, as I say, find himself as he's coming back into a pretty restacked Florida State offense. I think what we're going to see this weekend is a lot of Florida State running game. They've got a stacked backfield, at least 3 or 4 starting running backs. I think they're going to pound the rock. They're literally going to run it all over Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's passing game has some potential to kind of really stretch the secondary of Florida State, but the Florida State secondary do have a lot of returning starters, which is going to be beneficial because obviously on the offensive side they lost pretty much all of their offensive starters going into the NFL draft last year. Again, on the defensive side, they have restocked the defensive end. They've got Marvin Jones Jr., a transfer out of Georgia, who looks like he's going to kind of light up one side of that defensive structure and that defensive line, and on the other they've got the guy coming through, Peyton, who was 7.5 sacks last year coming through. Obviously he was rotational with Jared Verse there as a star, but hopefully he can break through this season. So, the defense looks like it's strong for the Seminoles. I've got a feeling the tight end for the Jackets looks like their best player, so we'll have to watch out for that side of things. The Jackets now, they're flattering to deceive. I think a lot of people thinking this is going to be a little bit of a closer game, being week 0. Obviously there's going to be some rust. Players are going to be a little bit off timing. There's going to be some missed plays and stuff, but I think people are getting a little bit suckered into the way that the Gold Jackets closed out last year. Yes, there was a close loss to Georgia, going back to Egg's point about quality losses. That one's probably scoring quite highly, but I think Georgia had already, focused a bit further down the line. They weren't really concentrating on that game against Georgia Tech at the time. So I think the 7-6 finish that they had is probably flattering to deceive. I think the bookies and the line is apparently, I think Florida State are 11.5 point favourites. That seems to be about right. I've got them winning by about 14. I think it will be, as I say, a running heavy game, but then hopefully, some of the passes will be able to be opened out from the Seminoles. I want to see DJ kind of move his feet a bit, see how he fits into the offense. We do have a couple of receivers who can probably take the roof off the Georgia Tech defense, but I think it's going to be run heavy first off, opening up the game, and whether or not we can keep Georgia Tech down, and whether or not, as I say, the Georgia Tech QB stops throwing the ball to the opposition is probably going to be what is the major deciding factor of this game. As I say, I've got the Seminoles winning 38-20, something 14 or 38-24, somewhere like that in that region. But I guess just like everybody else, I just want to see a great game. I'm just going to enjoy myself, enjoy having college football so close, over in Dublin. Dublin have done a great thing. So hopefully, if you can, you're going to get on the plane, get over there and come meet us all. We'll be there for the pre-game, the post-game, and obviously the ESPN game day there. So I'm sure it's going to be loud. It's going to be garnet and gold. So looking forward to seeing everybody over there. Take it easy.
Right. Thank you very much, Gary. And happy anniversary again to you and Mrs. Gary. And I'm very sorry to Mrs. Gary that we've had to take him for 2 minutes to send in that video this morning. On your anniversary. So, now we've got FSU Georgia Tech out the way, there are other games happening this weekend, none of which are obviously that important because this is the important one, but we will have Montana State at New Mexico. SMU will take on Nevada. And Delaware State will take on Hawaii. If they make it there, which we'll get onto, I'll let you get onto in a second. There's also a couple of other games. McNeese State at Tarleton State, which I know we're all over that one. We don't need to even talk about that one. You all know what's going to happen there. North Alabama versus Southern Mississippi State, which again just doesn't even need a mention. It's that good a game. And Norfolk State versus Florida A&M are all taking place this weekend. Any of those games stick out to you other than McNeese State at Tarleton State? There, Gary. Nick. Fuck's sake.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. I think the thing that... Let's touch on Delaware at Hawaii, because, like I said, if they make it there... The reason for that statement is Delaware missed their flight to Hawaii. They were scheduled to, yesterday morning, leave the college grounds at 4 a.m. in 4 or 5 coaches, and they had a flight booked that was 11 hours to Hawaii. By the time they got to JFK, they'd missed their flight. According to everything that I've read, it was due to a bus issue. I don't know what the bus issue is. I don't know whether one broke down. I don't know whether they all got stuck in traffic. Due to a bus issue, the entire Delaware State team missed their flight, which means they had to get a later flight into Hawaii, which means time adjustment and weather adjustment and physically adjusting to the surroundings as 24 hours less. Yeah, not exactly the greatest preparation to start a season. In that game, I won't pretend to know that, I'm fully on it, but Hawaii played well towards the end of the season. They won 3 of the last 4. Delaware had a terrible season last year, 1-10, I think, or 1-11. For those that don't know, Jeff Reinbold he's involved at Hawaii, isn't he? He's the special teams coach at Hawaii.
Yeah, he's defensive tackles, I want to say. Defensive lines. Yeah, defensive tackles.
I thought he was special teams. Right. So he's one of the big reasons why we're not seeing him on Sky for the NFL these days, is that he's working with Hawaii. So, I don't tend to think that game's gonna be massive. But I think if you look at last year, it was a very young Delaware team. Hawaii should be a bit more experienced. So I think if I was picking on that one, I would go with the Rainbow Warriors over Delaware.
Okay. So I will also, again, I have to take Hawaii on this one. I think games like that are very, very difficult to... Just with the travel and everything, they're very, very difficult, especially when one team doesn't have to travel. But... yeah, I had to see past Hawaii on that one. I haven't done as much research into that game as I would have liked, but so thank you for that, Nick. And if we move on, we'll have a quick look at the other 2 main games that are going on this week. Montana State at New Mexico. Have you any thoughts on Montana State at New Mexico? Because obviously getting you to stop talking about New Mexico... very, very easy.
Yeah. You're forever telling me to shut up about New Mexico. The Montana State Bobcats had a great season last year. They finished second in the FCS in the running game. 293 yards per game they ran, and the running game contributed 41 touchdowns. That's devastating. So if New Mexico don't cure that and hold up the run game, they're just going to get run all over. Obviously, the New Mexico didn't have a great defense last year. Every game that they played, it was high scoring. They just couldn't keep points off the board. So I would bet I would pick Montana State to beat the Lobos.
It's going to be a very, very close game. And that's the one thing when I did do a little bit of research, I was one of them. Montana State were one of the better teams in the FCS, have everything that they need to take the game to them. Let me go back to the top here. Have everything they need to take it to them. And New Mexico have a quality run game, which the offensive line has to work for, and so far I believe that it's just they've shown that they've not necessarily got the offensive line has not been their strong suit and has not really helped. So they've got to really help that running game to get going. I will take New Mexico here. Yeah.
Like I said, I'll take Montana State, but I do think it's quite interesting that New Mexico have not lost to an FCS side since 2011.
And you know what they say about records?
So records are made to be broken.
But
so that I'll go with Montana
State.
But I
think one of the important things there, though, is the game is probably going to be very, very, very close. So don't expect it to be anything. I don't think you can expect it to be anything other than very, very close. Finally, SMU at Nevada. SMU were tipped by, and again, let me just get this up here because SMU were tipped by, who was it? Egg to take the ACC this year.
You see, that day we were talking earlier in the Georgia Tech FSU game that we're going to, and we were talking about 55.5 points being a high total. The total in this SMU Nevada game is 56.5.
56.5
for the total. That's if I was struggling at 55.5, I'm certainly not going to take 56.5. That's a big total.
One of the questions, I think, not necessarily one of the questions you've got to ask yourself, have you seen the spread for this game?
25 plus, I think.
24.5, I've got it here. 24.5 in favour of SMU. So it's one of those things where, 55, 56, whatever, might be a very, very close one. And the margin that SMU are expected to win by, the arse kicking that could very well ensue or would be expected to be ensue, you would expect to ensue during that game, SMU could do the vast majority of the legwork on that one. And it could very well be possibility because of the legwork that SMU would put in there when you expect something like a 25-point spread to get covered.
Yeah.
And a team that... Look, the ACC was one of those conferences that was kind of like no other, in that it's the only one that nobody agreed on who would take that conference. 5 of us, 5 different predictions for who would take it. So you can kind of take these predictions maybe with a pinch of salt if 5 teams could genuinely win it. But at the same time, if you are predicted to win the ACC and you feel that you would be in with a chance of winning the ACC, particularly taking it off someone like Florida State, but also in a conference where you've got a hotly contested or a hotly anticipated Miami team, where you've got a Clemson and where you've got the obvious actual winners of the ACC, which will be Louisville, like I said, you would want to come out and swing and make a statement in week 0. You're here and you're not messing about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I kind of... You see, if this game's going to be as competitive as we think it might be, I don't believe that spread can be right. In this game in particular, I won't be betting on this game, but if I was, I'd be taking the under at 56.5, and I'd be taking under the spread as well. I wouldn't have SMU to cover a 27.5 point spread. I just think that's, the games, I don't think it's going to be that, I don't think it's going to be that kind of game.
Entirely fair. And again, one thing that's been mentioned, particularly when it came down to FSU and Georgia Tech, is you just don't know necessarily what you're going to get in week 0. There could be a lot going on. There could be a fair few changes, and it just takes you that little bit longer to get your feet together and find your feet with it. And even if, let's face it, you win by 12, 13, 14 points, SMU will probably take that game, but that it could be very much a case of just not running away with it. So, Again, before we wrap up on this game, SMU or Nevada, I'm not going to you've made your thoughts very, very clear on the spread on this one, but I would hazard a guess that you are taking SMU as the winner.
Yes.
Okay. I will do the same. And I'll even go one step further, and I'll say that SMU will cover the spread. The favourites, Florida State will not cover the spread, but SMU will. Because exactly
I'm the other way round. Florida will cover the state, and SMU won't.
So that's just going to add a little bit of where we differ, and that's fine. We're both different people. Yeah, and it's okay to be wrong, Nick. So don't worry about that one either. With that in mind, I know Egg could not be with us today, but Egg has sent in a video and he's going to provide us with a little bit of his thoughts and his ideas going into week 0, I think particularly a bit more from a group of 5 standpoint. So I'm going to drop that video now and then we'll get back to it in, I think it's a 7-minute long video, so stick.
What's up, guys? Week 0 of the college football season has finally arrived and I could not be more excited. I'm even trying to ignore the fact that Boise State have decided, instead of naming 5-star transfer portal recruit as the starting QB, to name some schmuck from last season. I'm not going to go into deals because it's still eating me up. Anyway, I'm not really going to talk about the FSU Georgia Tech game because I imagine the guys doing the podcast will talk about that. What I will say is that I think FSU will definitely win the game. I think Georgia Tech are going to be a lot better than people are expecting. I think the game will be quite close. I'm thinking FSU will get the win there before the wheels start to ever so slightly fall off throughout the season. I'm not too high on FSU. I think they're kind of going through a transitional phase, a bit like my beloved Michigan. But we should move away from that because there's only one game I want to talk about. And that is, of course, Montana State against New Mexico. When Fletch asked me to come on the pod, I said I will only come on the pod if I can talk about FCS football and football from the less well-traveled path. And he said, you can literally talk about anything you want, Egg. And I said, I will only come on the podcast if I can talk about FCS football, Group of 5, and football from a less travel path. And he said, literally, Egg, I don't care what you talk about. Could you just come on the pod? And I said, all righty then, I will come on the pod, but I'm going to talk about FCS football, Group of 5, and football from a less travel path. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Good, right, I'm glad we've got that understood. Anyway, Montana State. So Montana State last season got to the second round of the FCS playoffs. They're currently ranked number 4 in the FCS preseason poll. Pretty big deal. They lost by 1 point to eventual national champions South Dakota State in the second round of that. They have returned a ton of players, pretty much everybody. QB Tommy Touchdown Mellett is back. He has 2,000 career rushing yards, 3K passing career yards. He threw for 10 touchdowns last season and only 2 interceptions. FCS play a lot less games as well. So when you're hearing those numbers, take that into consideration. They have 21 seniors on their roster as well. And last season, they averaged 39.9 points per game. Their offensive and defensive line is solid as well. Not a lot of transfers coming in and out. They've lost a few to FBS schools. 5 in total went through the transfer pool. But more importantly, they brought back another 5 players from FBS the other direction. Montana State are legit FCS team. Don't sleep on them if you're like me and you're concentrating on FCS football. New Mexico, on the other hand, lots of offensive talent in the pool come in. They've got 5 starters on the offensive line, are all upperclassmen. They all did come through the transfer pool, though, but they have all played a lot of snaps. How quickly they gel is going to be key here because Montana State are going to put them under a lot of pressure early on. Really good in the run game. They've got weapons out wide as well. Devon Dampier is back at QB. He took a lot of snaps last season. A few snaps, apologies. He got 525 yards as backup QB at New Mexico. There are a lot of questions on New Mexico's defense. Offensively, they should be fine. And I think that they're going to rack up a few points. Defensively, though, if they are not on point, this Montana State team is going to run absolute wild. The key area here, and it's going to be quite an unusual one, I think I'm going to be saying this quite a lot throughout the season, is the fact that New Mexico gave away a lot of penalties last season. In 7 games, they gave away 10 or more penalties. Their highest being 15 penalties in their losses to San Diego State and Utah State, all for losses as well. And they can't sack the ball as either. If Montana State get up early, this could be an upset. And by upset, I mean not an upset for me because I think Montana State are going to win. So I think Montana State are going to win by a score. That's my prediction. No diss to New Mexico. I know obviously they are in the same conference as my beloved Boise State, but I think Montana State are going to pull the upset here. I think we're going to see the FCS go 1-up in their mini rivalry with FBS, a rivalry that's only one way. Other games that are on week 0, there is Delaware State play Hawai'i at 5 a.m. UK time on Sunday morning. I was going to do some bit stuff about this, but this morning I've seen that Delaware State's flight, that the team missed the flight due to bus issues. They've missed their 10-hour flight to Hawai'i, which means their travel plans and practices are now in absolute chaos. Hawai'i all day long are going to win that. I was thinking that was going to be a lot closer game. Now I've seen the travel chaos. Rainbow Warriors going to get the dub there. Also, SMU play Nevada at 1 a.m. UK time. If I was any higher on SMU, I would be currently on the International Space Station. They're going to win the ACC. I am all aboard the SMU hype train. They play Nevada. I think Nevada aren't going to be as bad as people were expecting them to be. Made strides in football and basketball, but SMU are, they have told every man and his dog that they're in the ACC. Excuse me. I think there's undiscovered tribes in the Amazon rainforest who have currently found out that SMU are now in the ACC. They're here for a good time. They're here for a long time. They're going to win the ACC, and I am all aboard that hype train. Let's go SMU. Also, I don't know if everyone's heard, but apparently there's some sort of game going on in Dublin. FSU are playing Georgia Tech. I've already covered that. That's at 5 p.m. UK time. And Montana State play New Mexico at 9 p.m. UK time. There's no excuses. If you are new to college football, if you're transitioning from the NFL into college football, welcome aboard. There's snacks in the fridge. There's drinks in the fridge as well. There's snacks. Put your feet up. If you're looking for some recommendations, don't pick a team yet. Just watch the season. Let it unfold. If you are oh, Adam, you're going to pick a team. Do not pick a team that's good. The enjoyment will be go. Pick a team that's currently kind of rising up, going for a rebuild. Pick a really bad team at the minute as well. Someone with a bit of history, and don't be afraid to pick an FCS team. Muggins here, massive Michigan fan. I ride and die with the Wolverines. I'm also a Boise State fan. Got a lot of love for Boise State. And my FCS team is the New Hampshire Wildcats. Let's go Wildcats. Welcome aboard. Let's get it started. And let's please remember that there is only one correct answer when someone says, who do you prefer, Michigan or Ohio State? The answer is obviously Michigan. Let's go Blue. Let's go Montana State. I shall see you next week.
Nice one, Egg. Thank you very, very much for that one. And I'm very glad that between you and Garrett, you were still able to join us both here. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Have the best time on Saturday watching football. And Nick, I'll see you Saturday, mate.
I will see you bright and early bushy-tailed on Saturday.
I don't know about you. I'm debating just not going to bed on Friday night.
No, I'm going to bed.
It's the benefit though of not recording this on Friday this week. The benefit of not recording this on Friday this week. Half of my bag's already packed as well. So, well, I say half of my bag. I can only have a little bag.
I haven't even started. I'm not even taking it back. I'm not taking it back. I'm only going for a
few hours.
15 hours. I don't need a bag for 15 hours.
Fair enough. Well, with that being said, all said and done, I will see you Saturday. Have a lovely rest of your week, and yeah, enjoy your football this weekend, guys.